This is Protiviti Legal Perspectives.
Well, welcome to Protiviti's Legal Perspective podcast series. I'm your host, Chad Volkert, and I'm excited to have Frank Serge with us today. Frank is a managing vice president for legal consulting here at Protiviti, has over 20 plus years of industry experience and over 10 years with Robert Half and the Protiviti Consulting division. Frank, great to have you on the show today, and maybe share with our listeners a little bit about your expertise and background and your passions in and around helping both law firms as well as corporate legal departments solve their issues.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chad, for having me here today. Really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. You know, you said it. Over 20 years of experience. It's time has flown by, and I've loved just about every minute that I've spent in the legal space. I would say that I got my start really in the e-discovery world. Kind of grew up in that space, and then coming over to Robert Half and Protiviti, almost 11 years ago now. It's been a wonderful experience for me, and it's been great to be here. I would say over the last 5 to 6 years, I've really transitioned more into focusing on legal optimization, legal suite optimization, as well as really helping our clients get the most out of their contracts lifecycle management process. It's been an incredibly booming space, for the industry, and I'm seeing it as one that will just continue to grow, evolve, and develop.
That's great, Frank. Well, I know you have a breadth of experience, litigation, e-discovery, merger and acquisition, large-scale data engagements, but I want to hone into your point on the growing aspects of the business that you're driving in and around contracts lifecycle management, remediations, drafting and redlining, and outsourcing within the contract space. Can you share with our listeners a little bit about what in-house legal professionals should be aware of with this optimization and transformation that's happening, and how should legal departments think about contracts management from creating efficiencies, but also managing their overall risk?
Yeah, well, I recently attended a conference, the Clock Conference, about a little bit more than a month ago now, and the number of attendees that had some sort of contracts capabilities, or exhibitors that had some sort of contract capabilities in their title or in their primary service delivery model was more than half. I think, to be exact, it was somewhere between 70 and 75 of the 120 exhibitors there. What that tells me is that the legal environment is definitely taking contracts and contracts management more seriously. It's an area that helps clients manage risk. It helps them path more quickly and effectively towards revenue, which is really good for the bottom line. But also, it allows them to contract with organizations that provide them with services and supplies that help them deliver on their goals, with their respective clients as well. I would say that the other key area and kind of point of emphasis is the emergence of generative AI in this space. It's obviously a very it's very buzzworthy right now, and everyone's talking about it. Everyone has different, I think, definitions of AI, but just in the last, I would say 6 to 12 months, and the advancements of generative AI, I really see this as an area that's going to, revolutionize contracts lifecycle management and just contracts management in general.
That's great. And, you think about these changes in technology and the wide offering out there. There's many organizations that have the challenge of figuring out where all of their contracts are, how to streamline the process to eventually move to the right contracts lifecycle management tool. And I know you do a lot of advising with our team and helping clients analyze various CLM providers, scoring them, helping in that interview process. But before that, what do you do with these challenges in and around contracts? I know you've helped our organization Protiviti create a large language model enablement tool to streamline contracting prior to the implementation of a CLM. Maybe talk with our listeners and share with them some of these ongoing challenges companies are having and what steps you're taking and the team's taking to help create efficiencies.
Yeah, so there's a lot there, right? I would say, having an environment where you know where all of your contracts live is, first and foremost, right? So some sort of centralized repository is going to be important. Uh, you know, Also building out, templates, making sure that you've got, standardized agreements that can be leveraged by all those in the business. I think what I'm finding as far as challenges are concerned, especially with, so many acquisitions that have happened over time, with certain organizations, is that they have, 10 or 20 different templates to deliver the same, goods and services to their client. Um, those 10 or 20 different templates have, various types of variations within, the same types of terms, which then, could potentially open up clients for unnecessary exposure. So, I think getting standardized is important. I think the other thing that is very challenging, especially for companies that are growing quickly, to kind of get a handle on is, what should legal own and what should the business own? So I think being able to really determine that, upfront prior to, any sort of implementation is going to be important. I think oftentimes with companies that, again, are growing, and growing rapidly, they put contracts in legal departments inbox every single day. And they are changing, they're adjusting, business terms, they're adjusting, signatories. I mean, things along those lines that just don't necessarily need to follow them, and it creates an unnecessary bottleneck. So for me, it's about coming up with, an appropriate process, making sure that you're delegating the right activities to the right individuals within the organization, and also making sure that there's a clear delineation between what are business terms and what are legal terms, so that legal doesn't create a bottleneck. And then once you're, good in those key categories and those key areas, now I think you're really well prepared to move into the CLM selection initiative within your or for your organization.
Great points, Frank. And I really like the fact and what we're hearing from clients around the world that are working with you and members of our team is that we're looking at this contracting issue, bottleneck, whatever you want to call it, through the lens of risk and litigation, right? Based on our large e-discovery and litigation practice over the years, the ability to sort of help organizations reduce risk, coming at it from that perspective, seems to really be effective and a way to help not only the legal department, but the C-suite and business owners understand that this contracting is being viewed from a efficiency standpoint, but also not to create additional exposure for the organizations. And you mentioned, Frank, this assessing of the different CLMs. Maybe what are the top couple of critical things you think are most important when looking for the right CLM system for your organization?
Great questions. I really believe, one, you have to have an idea of your budget. There's many, as I mentioned earlier in our discussion today, Chad, there were over 70 exhibitors at this conference that I attended. Probably 30 or 40 of them had their own, CLM platform to pitch. So you've got a significant number of technologies out there to utilize, which means that you've got quite a varying level of costs between technologies. So I think it's really important for individuals to become within organizations to become very educated on what the costs, from a licensing perspective and implementation perspective may be. Obviously it's going to vary depending on the complexities, but just to have a really rough idea of what those costs are going to be, per platform. I think far too often we we spend a lot of time going down the path, and we may really like something at the end of the day, but then we find out it's going to, blow the budget, and now we've just wasted 3 to 4 months. So budget, I think, is a very, very important thing. Also, understanding what your key needs are. Do you just need a centralized environment that is just going to provide you with updates and or reminders of expirations, and an area where the entire enterprise can go and look up key categories of information within a contract? Pretty straightforward. Or are you going to want to step into more of the generative AI space? Are you going to want to have more automation? How many different applications are going to plug into this environment? That also plays a key role in the selection. And I think maybe most importantly, how is this platform, this technology going to grow and evolve with your business? So, I think those are kind of really 3 key areas of emphasis that I always talk to my clients about, just so that we can get started off on the right foot, so that when we begin this process of interviewing, entertaining, and thinking about CLM transformation, that we actually put the right people or the right technologies in front of them early on to help expedite that process of selection.
That's great, Frank. And maybe as a follow-up, because I know a lot of organizations get down the road with thinking about what's CLM, the interview process, yet they haven't done a lot of the front-end work that has to be done for that final implementation, such as data mapping. Where are all of their contracts? Who owns those contracts? I mean, we even talk to companies where they're pulling paper documents still out of people's desk drawers, right? So is there 1 or 2 things that you would recommend on the front end, right? If you're an organization thinking about how to streamline your contracts, maybe moving to a CLM, you're advising them in the early stages. What are a couple of those things that a company should be thinking about or worried about in order to call you to get those advisory type services?
Right. Well, I think it kind of goes back to your earlier question. What are some of those key elements, right, that go into selecting a solution? For me, if you're wanting to really take advantage of automation within a CLM to help drive those types of efficiencies, what I call doing more with the same, then you really have to have a strong playbook in place. You mentioned it, from a data mapping perspective. You need to know where all of your data lives, where all of your contracts live. That is, to me, one of the most important things. But also making sure that you have kind of a decision matrix or a decision tree. Who and what are responsible for making certain determinations as to whether or not we're going to do business with this client. Again, I mentioned earlier in my discussion with you, what's legal versus what is business. Decisions. Having that playbook in place will absolutely help expedite the process of implementation, and maybe most importantly, help you achieve those efficiencies in that automation as you implement.
Well, great points, Frank, and I know you often share with us and your clients, advise early and often, right? This is a longer process than most organizations think. There's a lot of different steps. And by planning early and working earnestly with a trusted advisor, you're able to expedite and ultimately reduce the spend and the cost and the exposure on the back end. Well, it's been great having you today, Frank. I wish we had more time. I'd like to bring you back to talk a little bit more about your deep experience within litigation and how you're supporting companies from that regard as well. Until next time, I'm your host, Chad Volkert, with Protiviti's Legal Perspectives podcast, and thanks again to Frank Serge for being with us today.
Thank you for listening today. Find other episodes of Protiviti Legal Perspectives on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast content. And to learn more about Protiviti's legal consulting services, visit protiviti.com.